When Pet Sounds came out in America in May 1966, it was met with a lukewarm commercial and critical response. In Britain, however, the record was a success both from a commercial and critical point of view, with the British press hailing it as the most progressive pop album ever released. In this video, we're going to look at how Pet Sounds was received in Britain, its chart success, the critical praise, the response it got from British artists and fans, and how that early recognition and lasting admiration helped keep the album's reputation alive, eventually turning Pet Sounds into one of the most celebrated and influential albums in pop history. So without further ado, let's begin.
And now, God only knows, the Beach Boys, number 26 on our fabulous 40 knockout harmonies in this one. Listen carefully. 12 minutes until 8 o'clock on the Mike Lennox Breakfast program on your first for fun station, Big L, commercial radio at its best.
In May 1966, the Beach Boys released one of the most ambitious albums in pop history, Pet Sounds. Emotional, experimental, and highly innovative, it marked a dramatic shift in the group's sound. But in America, the reaction was mixed. The album peaked at number 10 according to Billboard, and it quietly disappeared from the charts. Many listeners and critics found it too weird, too introspective, and too different from the Beach Boys' earlier material. Compared to their previous albums, its sales were considered a disappointment, and it was the first Beach Boys album since 1963 to not be granted a gold certification. Its lukewarm commercial reception in the States prompted Capitol Records executives to rush release the Best of the Beach Boys compilation just 2 months later in July 1966. In Britain, however, it was a different story. Pet Sounds soared to number 2 on the UK albums chart and remained in the top 20 for 32 weeks. British critics, musicians and fans instantly recognized it as a masterpiece, and music papers hailed Brian Wilson as a genius. The album influenced some of the biggest bands from that period, including the Beatles, and inspired a wave of cover versions from British artists almost overnight.
God only knows what I'd be without you. It starts with just a little glance now. Right away you're thinking about romance now. Brand new love affair is such a beautiful thing. Today has gone, tomorrow is here and gone so fast.
I came along when she broke your heart. That's when you needed someone to help forget about her.
Of course, none of these covers were a patch on the original versions, but they stand as a testament to the popularity of the record among British musicians.
I'm waiting for the day when you can love me.
In Britain, the publishing rights to Brian Wilson's songs were handled by Rolling Stones manager Andrew Oldham through Immediate Records, a label he had launched in 1965. Because of his involvement, Oldham, along with Paul McCartney, had the chance to hear Pet Sounds a couple of months before its official UK release. In an interview several years later, Oldham recalled,
I remember Paul McCartney waiting in my house for Lou Adler to arrive from Los Angeles with an acetate of Pet Sounds that Brian Wilson had given to him for us. We shared the acetate. Paul had it one day, I had it the next. The size of the pitch we played on had changed forever. Pet Sounds changed my life for the better. It enhanced the drugs I was taking and made life oratory. I was 21 and enjoying my second year at the top of the pop heap. It gave me emotional life for the cost of just 2 sides of vinyl.
Pet Sounds went on to become a huge influence on both Revolver and Sgt. Pepper, and because Paul McCartney had heard the album before most people in the UK, it even left its mark on the single the Beatles were working on at the time, Paperback Writer. The song seemed to fuse Pet Sounds-style harmonies with a backing track that was reminiscent of the sort of material that the Yardbirds were recording during that period. McCartney said, "Before Paperback Writer, we had been influenced by artists like Smokey Robinson and the Miracles or Phil Spector, but at this point, it was the Beach Boys. Paperback Writer is a nod to them, and to the idea that everyone wants to write a novel." Shortly after its UK release, the British press were already hailing Pet Sounds as the most progressive pop album ever recorded, and the record was picked as Album of the Month by nearly every major British music publication. Disc magazine wrote,
"Let the adjectives roll. A superb, important, and really exciting collection from the group whose recording career so far has been a bit of a hodgepodge. At last, they seem to have found their direction under the clever guidance of Brian Wilson, and this should gain them thousands of new fans. Instrumentally ambitious, if vocally over pretty, Pet Sounds has brilliantly tapped the pulse of the musical times. God Only Knows is a standard gem with its glorious hymnal feel. Pet Sounds is a fascinating instrumental track. Wouldn't It Be Nice is fresh. Far and away our album of the month. Don't miss it.
Record Mirror wrote,
Pet Sounds has been the most widely heralded long-play pop album for some time, the subject of much praise and no criticism. The album is very clever, and each track seems to have been planned and prepared individually. The overall sound is similar throughout, which is good, and interest isn't lost. The new sounds and things which the boys have so obviously been trying to create have all succeeded perfectly, with the exception of the ending on Caroline No. It will probably make their current fans like them even more, but it's doubtful whether it will make them any new ones.
At this point, the British press was filled with articles about the Beach Boys and their bold new direction, and music publications eagerly interviewed Brian Wilson about Pet Sounds, treating him less like a pop star and more like a serious composer. Beat Instrumental magazine reported,
Lots of insiders with expert knowledge of the pop scene look on Brian Wilson, 23-year-old heavyweight of the Beach Boys, as a genius. When I spoke to him on the transatlantic phone recently, he gave me some idea of what goes to make up a Beach Boys record. Brian Wilson said, I'd say the Pet Sounds album was the proudest production of them all for me. But there's something else that you won't hear for a while. It's a song called Good Vibrations, and I have high hopes that this one will be specially well received.
Wilson also spoke about the emotional and spiritual side of his music.
I'm not formally religious. I simply believe in the power of the spirit and in the manifestation of this in the basic goodness of people. I try to seek out the best elements of people, because after all, people are part of my music. A lot of the songs I write are the result of emotional experiences, of sadness and pain, and you don't get those experiences except in association with people.
Brian Wilson also described his unique creative process.
I play over what I call feels. They're like tiny fragments of ideas, like little rhythmic fragments. Explaining this always sounds so darned complicated, but I'll try and shorten it. These ideas kind of buzz round in my head, and it's imperative that I get them out into the open air. I can see them then, and touch them firmly. They're not feels anymore, they're real bits of music.
He singled out one track from Pet Sounds in particular.
Take that track Let's Go Away for a While on Pet Sounds. For me, it's the most satisfying piece of music that has yet been released. I think the chordal changes are very special. Lots of musicians, 12 fiddles, piano, 4 saxes, oboe, vibes, and a guitar with a Coke bottle on the strings for a semi-steel guitar effect. Then I mixed in 2 basses and percussion. I applied a certain secret set of dynamics through the arrangement. I honestly believe that the result is exactly what the song says. It's something everyone can feel because everyone has said, let's go away for a while, sometime or other. Most of them can't get away, but they feel it.
And Brian Wilson ended with a reflection on his broader artistic mission.
My aim is to get total musical communication between us. That's what I work for in creating tunes for the group. I'm very aware of the value of speaking through a song. I don't mean those messages. I'm pretty tired of all that. I mean just saying what you have to say to music. That's why I'm on this uncontrollable kick of bending electricity and recording techniques to make them work for us. These things are there to be used to the maximum, top maximum.
And now here's another track from the Beach Boys' new album. This one's called That's Not Me.
A couple of months after Pet Sounds was released, Melody Maker asked several stars of the time such as Eric Clapton, Keith Moon or Stones manager Andrew Oldham among others about their opinion on Pet Sounds.
The most progressive pop album ever, or as sickly as peanut butter? The record's impact on artists and the men behind the artists has been considerable. The lengthy planned orchestration and finicky recording could set new standards altogether in Britain. The amount of time and thought Brian Wilson put into Pet Sounds was endless, and such exhaustive planning and musical mathematics might start a few lively brains ticking on this side of the Atlantic. This week, the Melody Maker decided to ask a cross-section of pop people their views on Pet Sounds. Eric Clapton said, "All of us, Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce and I, are absolutely and completely knocked out with Pet Sounds. I consider it to be one of the greatest pop LPs to ever be released. It encompasses everything that's ever knocked me out and rolled it all into one. We're all gassed by it. Brian Wilson is without doubt a pop genius." Andrew Oldham, Rolling Stones manager and publisher of Beach Boys compositions in Britain, said, I think that Pet Sounds is the most progressive album of the year in as much as Rimsky-Korsakov's Scheherazade was. It is the pop equivalent of that, a complete exercise in pop technique. Personally, I consider it to be a fantastic album. The lyrics are tremendous. The way Wilson has suited them to the songs is outstanding. I see pop music as a form of escapism, and Pet Sounds is a great example of escapism. Spencer Davis said, "It's fantastic. I've just bought it and finished playing it. God Only Knows is the most fantastic track on the album. Brian Wilson is a great record producer. I haven't spent my time listening to the Beach Boys before, but I am a convert now, and I just want to listen to this LP again and again. 13 of the tracks are originals, which can't be bad."
Tony Rivers, vocalist of the Castaways, who recorded a cover of God Only Knows and issued it as a single in July 1966, was also very impressed.
"I think it's a revolution in record production. We've been playing Beach Boys songs for years, but Pet Sounds is a complete change of style. Bruce Johnston, the sixth Beach Boy, played it to us first, and we couldn't work it out. Not until we took the record home and lived with it for a while did we begin to understand it. It's revolutionary in that Brian Wilson thinks out the song and then does the arranging, recording, and even the singing if the others aren't available."
But not everyone was immediately on board with Pet Sounds. Scott Walker said,
"I don't think it's revolutionary. In fact, I didn't even like it as much as the other Beach Boys album." Manfred Mann's lead singer, Mike Darbo, said, "Basically, I admire the ingenuity of the LP, but it's not as revolutionary as people say. They've done a lot of unusual things, but there are one or two weak tracks. Not quite the rave people have made it out to be. It's a sort of Brian Wilson experimental combo. For me, it's not the same Beach Boys. They had more appeal as a group as they were before."
And another musician who wasn't keen on the album was Keith Moon, drummer for The Who. Moon was a huge fan of the Beach Boys' early surf hits, as well as Jan and Dean's California sound. He loved the fun, high-energy vibe of songs like Surfin' USA and Barbara Ann. But Pet Sounds caught him off guard. Keith Moon said,
"I think Pet Sounds illustrates the way one man's mind works, that of Brian Wilson. I think there's nothing revolutionary in the album. Perhaps the only revolution is in the group itself, the way they've changed with the album. They are not so much a vocal group these days. Vocals, as such, have almost disappeared with this album."
Apparently, Keith Moon wasn't the only member of The Who didn't like Pet Sounds. A few months later, Disc and Music Echo magazine asked Pete Townsend about the album.
Pete Townsend this week attacked Brian Wilson, musical brain behind the Beach Boys, for making pop music too complex. "Brian Wilson lives in a world of flowers, butterflies, and strawberry-flavored chewing gum," Townsend said. "His world has nothing to do with pop. Pop is going out on the road, getting drunk and meeting the kids. Good Vibrations was probably a good record, but who's to know? You had to play it about 90 bloody times to even hear what they were singing about." As the musical brain behind The Who, the group that last year Paul McCartney predicted would probably be the biggest influence on pop music in 1966, Pete Townsend finds himself concerned about the state of pop music in general, and especially about the British pop scene. His attitude to pop is that it's getting so complicated that nobody knows what's happening, least of all the fans. Pete said, "The kids just don't know what's going on. Everything's so involved. Next year it's going to be worse. We're going to have a batch of overproduced Beach Boys records and overproduced records in general. Andy Warhol will come over and start on his psychedelic bit, and everyone will walk around saying, 'That's what I thought all the time,' and the first person to explain it like that will cop the money. The British pop scene needs the Beatles to come out of their hole and make a really simple pop record to sort things out. I'd prefer to see a reversion to pop for a pop audience. It's all wrong to elevate a pop audience to what you're doing."
Of course, Townsend quickly changed his mind about the record, and in an interview years later, Townsend said, "For me, Sgt. Pepper's and Pet Sounds redefined music in the 20th century. Atmosphere, essence, shadow, and romance were combined in ways that could be discovered again and again. Neither album made any deep political or social commentary, but the ideas weren't what mattered. Listening to music had become a drug in itself." While Pet Sounds initially underperformed in the States, its strong reception in Britain played a crucial role in shaping the legacy it holds today. In 1966, British critics and musicians immediately recognized the album's ambition and emotional depth, and that early wave of praise gave Pet Sounds a kind of artistic credibility that helped it endure, even when mainstream interest faded. After going out of print in 1974, the album entered a period of obscurity with prolonged placement in discount bins. But in Britain, it never fully disappeared from view. Throughout the 1970s, several British music critics continued to highlight its brilliance. A pivotal moment came with a 1971 Melody Maker article titled Endless Summer, written by Richard Williams. In it, he reminded readers of the importance and innovation of Pet Sounds, offering a serious re-evaluation of the Beach Boys' artistic contribution. Articles like that helped reframe how the album was perceived. They reinforced the idea that Pet Sounds wasn't just a quirky departure for the Beach Boys, it was one of the most important and forward-thinking records of its time. As the years went on, and as new generations of musicians and critics cited it as a major influence, the album's stature steadily grew. As music culture began to value studio innovation and emotional honesty, Pet Sounds was rediscovered and reassessed. Today, it's often ranked among the greatest albums of all time, and the early support and lasting admiration it received in Britain played a major role in making that happen.